And we turn now to the silver rule for today. And that is this: my conscientious self, place people rightly in your estimation. So remember, all of these rules begin with this phrase, my conscientious self, which means that the rules are not directed toward others. We're not concerned with instructing others, judging others. In our study of these rules, it is just for ourselves. It's for our own cultivation of attention. So we don't pick up the book of rules and point to a line and quote it to someone and say, you should follow this. It's for ourselves. It's something that we do personally, inwardly. My conscientious self, place people rightly in your estimation. Now, there's another rule which says, my conscientious self, be prejudiced against no one. Don't approach relationships with a prejudgment and impose that judgment on other people. Have an open mind. This rule balances that rule. Have an open mind, but be discerning. Do not be naive. So this means that when we come to a situation, we come to a relationship, naturally in life, we have to maintain judgments of certain kinds. We have to make decisions, and those decisions are based on the evidence that's available to us. We have to discern. Discernment is part of human life, to discern. So this is a reflection that brings attention to the act of discerning. Place people rightly in your estimation. In other words, when we approach a situation, we do have to make a judgment of some kind, but let's be sure that that judgment isn't a prejudice. It isn't something that we've carried over from another situation, which isn't relevant here. And we have to be sure that we haven't overestimated someone's capacity in a certain matter, nor have we underestimated it. So we have to be carefully discerning. Now, something that might make us overestimate someone's capacity would be that we really want someone to do this thing for us. We want it to be a success. And so we project that hope, that need, and latch onto that person and produce a fantasy that says that this person will do exactly what we hope and wish. But that fantasy may be all in our mind. That person simply may not have the experience, the capacity, the aptitude for that particular task. That person may have the experience and aptitude for something else, which is wonderful and marvelous. But we may be imposing an expectation which is unrealistic if we're not careful. On the other hand, it's possible to underestimate a person. So many stories, and I'm certain that in the life experience of each of us, there are stories of each of these. For example, a great story of olden times in India, the Jataka tales, those tales that Noranisa retold. There's one that she didn't retell, but which has this moral that there was a gardener in the garden of the king of Benares. And the New Year festival rolled around. And he so much wanted to take part in that festival. But he had duties in the garden that he couldn't leave. And so he was very frustrated. But the monkeys saw him. They saw his frustration, and they approached him and said, "Oh, gardener, why do you look so sad?" He said, "Well, I want to go to the fair, but I can't. I have to take care of the garden." And they said, "Oh, we'll take care of the garden. You just go." And in that moment, his whole thought was on the fair, not on the garden. Anyone who came along and said they would tend to the garden, he was delighted. So he said, "Yes, thank you so much. All you have to do is water the plants and make sure that each one gets the right amount of water." So they said, "Yes, yes, of course, we'll do it." And so he went to the fair, and they started eating the fruits and things of the garden. But they knew they had a duty. They had to give water to the plants. But then they remembered each one has to be given the amount of water that is right for that plant. It can't be too much or too little. They realized they didn't know how to make that judgment. And so they consulted the king of the monkeys, and he said, "Yes, we've got to deal with this very thoughtfully. There's only one way to know, and that's based on the length of the roots. If it has long roots, it will need more water. Short roots, it will need less water." And they said, "Yes, but how do we know the length of the roots?" So it's only one way to solve that problem, to unroot them all. So they dug up all of the fruit trees and all the flowers and poured water in all of the holes. And of course, the gardener came back after 3 days, and the whole garden was uprooted. So they did their best, but so he had overestimated their knowledge of gardening. And then there are cases, of course, of underestimating. And an example of that is it was a very great concert musician, I think it was a violinist, for whom people would pay huge amounts to see play at Carnegie Hall. And that same musician played in the subway, and everyone just passed by without giving a second look because, no attention. So we notice those things that were privilege brought especially to our attention. But if something is nearby, we might just take it for granted because it comes too easily. So that's an example of underestimating. Or another example is those beloved movies, the Star Wars movies. In the second one, when Luke goes to study to become a Jedi, and he lands in a swamp, and he's looking for the great master Yoda, and he happens across this funny little gnomish character who's green and speaks in a funny way and is kind of bumbling, and Luke doesn't take him seriously at all and just asks if he'll help him find Yoda, and becomes impatient with him and feels like he's wasting time. He just wants to get to Yoda, not to spend too much time with this funny little creature. And then suddenly the realization dawns, that is Yoda. He is Yoda. So we often overlook what we're not able to recognize, but there may be a capacity there. There may be an excellence there that we overlook if we're not careful. So this rule is a reminder. Place people rightly in your estimation. Look clearly. Don't bring your prejudices, your unreasonable expectations. Don't be driven by fantasies or desperate hopes. Really be attentive. Who am I with right now? What's going on? Glance to glance, listening, paying attention, breath to breath. What's happening here? Be attentive to that. So I'll say the words of this rule, and if you feel that you want to add your voice while we close our eyes and make the resolution that, yes, I will undertake this. Yes, this is my ideal, to be discerning in all of my relationships and to gauge the trust, the commitment that I extend toward people according to what is appropriate, what is fitting, suitable, and not to be in the sway of passing emotions. Be totally attentive. Is that our ideal? And if it is, let's resolve to it. So I'll say it once myself, and then we can say it all together if you wish. My conscientious self, place people rightly in your estimation. My conscientious self, place people rightly in your estimation.